Hello everybody, I am TinTim, that is T-I-N as in Nilla Wafer, yum, T-I-M as in malta meal. And this is my audition video for Queens of the Week. Queens of the Week is a collaborative channel that is one of my favorite channels on YouTube that I have been watching pretty much since its inception in May. It is a group of drag queens who sound off on pertinent topics of the day, including but not limited to drag-related issues. I have done direct response videos a couple of times to Queens of the Week's topics, and I thought about just submitting those response videos as my audition, but there were a few questions that Pedro Mendez, the top bitch in charge of the channel, asked us to address in the audition videos. I also thought this would be a great opportunity to tell you all who are regular subscribers to my channel about myself and some of my history and what led me to drag. I am currently 30 years old. Shh, don't tell anyone it's that old. And I live here in Chicago. I kind of came to drag in a roundabout way. I'm a writer. I'm the author of 2 volumes of short fiction published by small presses. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I was beginning to do live readings of my work. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to a literary reading, but a lot of them can be really dull. And I decided early on I wanted to take advantage of the space to do something that was, more eye-catching, more of a performance, to draw more attention to my work, and that would potentially be interesting for all audience members, writers and non-writers alike. I early on started dressing up and putting on makeup and costumes. At first it was very kind of genderfuck, glam boy, a little bit David Bowie, Adam Lambert, but also some Club Kid influences, James St. James, Michael Alec kind of thing. Over time it just got progressively draggier as I wanted to try new makeup things. Genderfuck and Club Kid are still huge influences on my drag and what I do, but in the last year and a half or so I've really been challenging myself to acquire more of the traditional skills of female impersonation. The way I see it, it's all tools to have in my kit, and the more things that are there, the more I am able to, become whatever I want to become on my own terms. I continue to read and perform in the literary community here in Chicago, but I have also started to feel a little too comfortable there. Last winter, spring, I started to kind of venture out more into Chicago's LGBT and queer nightlife and to become friends with some of the professional queens here in Chicago and industry people, and have a pretty solid support system and network now of established queens as well as new girls. And I've done, a few amateur contests and performed at some fundraisers, birthday parties for industry friends, and, also just sort of go out to see and be seen. So I think I have an interesting perspective that's sort of insider, outsider in terms of the business and of drag. I also, early this fall, started doing YouTube reviews of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, and quickly developed a reputation for doing a kind of more analytical, somewhat academic, but still accessible approach to the reviews. Ended up dubbing myself America's first drag queen public intellectual, or the Cornell motherfucking West of drag. Pandora Box shared 1 or 2 of the videos, which brought a whole bunch of new subscribers. Now I'm at about 500, I think, and building. I'm hoping that season 5 of Drag Race will, maybe double that. Oh, the other thing I should say about my literary work and the readings and performances is that as they've gotten draggier, they have also become more multimedia. So in addition to just the makeup and costume, also doing more of my own, what I call like DIY dance pop songs that I weave in and out through my reading, sometimes video. And then that is something that's bled over into some of the drag performance I'm starting to do, lip-syncing to more of my own songs and material that I produce myself, just to kind of, stand out a little bit and do something a little bit more transgressive and different. Transgressive art in general is like a huge influence on my drag. I'm obsessed with and constantly looking back to the kind of downtown Manhattan scene of the 1980s where drag and performance art and, nightlife and artists were bleeding over into the same spaces at places like Pyramid Club, where RuPaul got her start in New York. And that's sort of my fantasy, I think, is to create new spaces that are reminiscent of that, but in a contemporary way, not being stuck in the past, obviously. I think to Queens of the Week, I would bring an unique kind of intellectual perspective. If you all have watched the response videos I've done, I tend to take a very different approach or have a different opinion on the topics than a lot of the existing group, and I know that that's something that, my impression is some of y'all are looking for a range of perspective on the topics. I think I can also be funny, even if it's not always intentional. I also approach drag in a very visual way, so when I put together a look, I really try to make it distinctive. So hopefully that is also another draw for my videos, what I'll turn out next. I also have a unique political perspective in addition to, intellectual. My undergraduate background was in women's and gender studies, and I moved on from that to spend about 5 years working at an institution here in Chicago that gave grants to small community organizing and activist groups working on social justice issues here in the city, so I know a lot about not just, the theory or what have you behind LGBT and queer activism, but also a lot about what people have done in practice and just kind of social movements and organizing, and I think that that's another kind of lens that I would bring to the channel sometimes. In his video inviting folks to audition, Pedro briefly asked us to suck up, but then said that was a joke. But what I will say is, having watched Queens of the Week from the get-go last May, I've been really impressed by not just the topics y'all have taken on and chosen to tackle and your perspectives on them, but definitely by each of you as individuals and what you bring to the table. I think that Katana Ray and Pedro, you really, to me, represent a kind of new generation of drag, taking advantage of the new media tools that are available to you to create, whole new platforms for disseminating drag to audiences in whole new ways, I tend to think of drag as like the ultimate DIY art form. What I see you all doing is not waiting to get your opportunity from a club, claiming your space now and creating your own platforms, your own way to be visible and to be out there, which I think is really awesome. I'm also impressed by just how self-taught you are in your paint skills and how far you've gotten without needing someone to kind of sit down and help you. But then that you each have such distinctive personalities too. I've been really impressed, Katana, by your interest in and respect for drag history and teaching that to yourself, as well as your really high standards for your own and others' art. I see you really critically examining what you're doing so it can just get better and better and better, and you're already, I think, because of that, at a really advanced level in your skills, and that'll only get more amazing, and I think it's because you have that judgment, which you really need to develop as an artist to be successful in any art. And then Pedro is just painfully, viciously funny, this large personality that I think will serve you well out there in the world, claiming the space that you want for the life that you want. And I think that'll be, you're going to be spectacular. Porcelain Aquarius, I don't know if she's still going to be a contributor to the channel. If I read some of the comment threads right, she may not have access to the technology anymore that she needs to make her videos, but I've been really impressed, Porcelain, if you're watching, by your honesty and naked, emotional candor and nakedness, as well as, just kind of not taking shit when it comes to controversial opinions, just staking your space. Misty Eyes, you are kind of the hardest one to talk about in a way, because you're the reason that I started watching this channel. I have been following your videos for a long time on your channel, and they were, hugely helpful to me in figuring out how to develop my own skills and makeup and other tricks. But then over time, I've gotten, so kind of hooked on you and your energy and your personality that even if a topic you post is not necessarily one I think I'm interested in, I love watching everything you do. You just have so much wisdom to share. And I also appreciate with this Queens of the Week channel, your desire to really make it, somewhat controversial. And then finally, Lady P, you just have the most positive energy, and then this kind of just classic theatricality that I think is part of what makes drag something that feeds and sustains people. I know that you don't like to talk about politics, and I certainly wouldn't want to reduce you to the politics of where you're from, because you're so much more than that. But when I I see your videos, I do think about, everything that Ireland has been through, political and religious violence in terms of being colonized. Yeah, you need the people who take those issues on in like a serious way, but you really need those people who keep hope and light and love in the world, and you have so much of that to give. I hope that wasn't too much sucking up. I really like sharing with people what I have been moved by about them, so that's what it's really about. It's not about like trying to get on the channel. And, I really admire you all and what you're doing, and I will continue to be a fan of Queens of the Week, whether you select me or not. I would also totally be willing to do a guest slot now and then. Whatever works for you all, I am game for. So that is everything. So thank you for considering me.